from Parliament House. We'll get to our reporter Nadirah Zaidi. She is there. Nadirah, you have been following what was expected from this budget speech. What stood out to you?
Thanks, Dawn. So I must highlight that the support for businesses to internationalize really stood out for me, because I've been speaking to businesses and a lot of them have plans or have the intention to venture abroad. But as you would know, there are some barriers. Unlike the MNCs, a lot of these small businesses require further financial support and guidance. So the enhancements of the grants from 50 to 70% is definitely a positive move. Another point to note is also the removal of the new to target market or overseas market criteria, which definitely makes it easier for some of these small businesses to tap into these grants. Now joining me is the MP for Jalan, Besar, Shawn Loh. He was also the budget director in the last two budgets, including the national SG60 budget last year, and he also helped to oversee the development of schemes like the CDC vouchers. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Loh. So this is the first budget in the new term of government. I mean, what signals does it send, and what's new and what's missing?
Great. Nadirah, most people are going to be focused on the budget measures, the announcements. That's part of the budget, which is the expenditure. But the overall budget is the expenditure as well as the income that the government receives. So the first observation I have is actually the elephant in the room. The gap between the government's income and its expenditure, what it's spending. And PM just announced that there's a budget surplus for the last FY and a projected budget surplus for the coming FY. Now, a budget surplus in the start of the term of government is not something surprising. In fact, it's very routine, it's very unsurprising. What is surprising is the why and the extent of that surplus. So PM announced that the budget surplus for the last FY25 was about 1.9% of GDP. That's a large amount, and most certainly probably larger than expectations. One level lower than that, we must understand why, and PM probably spent a lot of time explaining the corporate income tax increases. For MOF officers like myself, our usual rule of thumb is that corporate income tax contributes 3% of GDP. For the last few years, it's gone up to 4%, and PM hinted that last year it was even more than 4%. That 1% or 1.5 percentage points is a significant bumper crop of surpluses from corporates paying taxes in Singapore that we should be very, very thankful for, and it's the large driver of the budget surplus for last year and the projected budget surplus for next year. The question is why? I suspect it's because of previous budgets that invested in making Singapore a great place to do business, a safe place to do business, and a stable place to continue your business. And it's not just the economic programs that we have, but even the security programs. And PM spent some time talking about defense expenditure, how we're prepared to do more. All that contributes into an environment that seems to give us an additional Singapore stability premium that we've not had before. And that additional fiscal buffer is going to be very exciting for the government to decide how to deploy in the years to come. So that's the first observation I have.
Right. So basically, strengthening Singapore's hub as Singapore as a trusted and reliable hub is something that helps Singapore's fiscal balancing. I would say. I guess, you know, as I mentioned before, you were also the budget director in the last two budgets. What's one item in this year's budget that may seem big in spending but definitely critical?
Big in spending and definitely critical. Let me think about that. Overall, the budget items, if you ask me, and this is credit to the MOF team, were very comprehensive, but also very routine. There were no big pieces of announcements other than the AI strategy and how AI and PM is going to actually chair his AI council. But overall, there were incremental policy moves that are in the same direction as previous budgets, which means that the government's policy direction is probably going to be about the same. I do suspect that if you ask different stakeholders, the direction is going to be very different. The business community, you've started by saying that they might be happy with some of the grants and all. I take a different view. I think that the business cost side, the foreign manpower changes might be a bit of a squeeze for many businesses. And the progressive wage credit scheme, which PM also announced an extension of, is pretty much just a band-aid. It's not long enough and it's not high enough. And many businesses are probably going to tell you, and they're definitely going to tell me that as well. So there's a bit of a balance there. The economic programs will continue, but we have to be very mindful to watch business costs.
Right, so let's move on now to cost of living pressures. I mean, given the stabilizing inflation and the repeated tranches of, CDC vouchers, what do you make of the $500 CDC voucher that was announced today?
I see it as probably a Goldilocks level, Nadirah. Not too high, not too low. The truth is, even though inflation has moderated to less than 1% or about 1% last year, on the ground I still see a lot of residents having elevated anxieties about the cost of living, especially retired seniors. Because if you think about it, 1% is an increase on a high cost base. And if you're a retired senior, you don't earn an income that increases over time. So you're still faced with these high costs year on year. And the CDC vouchers will be very welcome by my community in Jalan Besar, definitely. And I think by all Singaporeans, especially those who don't directly benefit from the economy through higher wages.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Loh. So, as you've heard there from Jalan Besar MP Shawn Loh, there's still a lot more work to be done, and the CDC vouchers is obviously going to be welcomed by a lot of Singaporeans, especially the seniors. Back to you, Don.